During specific non-live fire training, there are additional RSO requirements that must be met. During rappelling and HRST operations, the RSO must be a rappel master or HRST master, and ensure that the proper number of certified rappel or HRST masters are present at all times. During assault climbing events, the RSO must be an assault climber or mountain leader, and ensure that the proper number of certified assault climbers are present at all times. During para-ops, the RSO must be qualified, and both the RSO and the DZ commander must be present within the drop zone while training is being conducted. POVs without a pass are prohibited in all training areas. POVs without a pass are prohibited on all ranges and training facilities, with the exception of those ranges and training facilities listed on this slide. POV passes must be requested through the range control officer at least 2 weeks prior to the training event. Note that military personnel must submit a signed battalion level recommendation letter, and civilians must submit through their sponsor. If a unit rents vehicles under a government contract, trucks only, those vehicles by default become government vehicles and do not require POV passes. In order for a privately owned vehicle to enter the training areas or ranges, the driver must meet the following requirements. They must have positive communication with long rifle via radio. The vehicle must be a truck-like vehicle. No sedans are authorized. The driver of the vehicle must have a current POV pass displayed at all times. The driver of the vehicle must be the owner of the vehicle. The vehicle must drive only on maintained roads. No jeep or tank trails or fire breaks. The vehicle must drive only on areas allowed by the road and river report. And finally, no POVs are allowed on grenade ranges, demo ranges, mortar positions, mortar firing areas, or artillery firing areas. While in training areas or ranges, if you find some unexploded ordnance, you will take the following action. Assume that all bombs, projectiles, canisters, and rockets are live ordnance. Do not touch, run over, or disturb any UXO or duds. Mark the location of the UXO or dud with white engineer tape or a suitable substitute. Determine a 10-digit grid, and notify long rifle immediately. Personal protection equipment. Any personnel from the training unit who make any movement downrange of the established firing line of the listed facilities shall wear full personal protection equipment whenever in those areas. This includes helmet, flak, and eye protection. All requests for EOD support for target inserts, escorts, and live fire penalty training shall be approved prior to the event by the range control officer. Requests shall be submitted no later than 7 working days prior to the event. In this section, we will be discussing ammunition. Next to range safety, ammunition is one of the most critical decision areas for OICs and RSOs. Failure to properly manage ammunition on a range can result in ammunition getting into the hands of unauthorized users and injured personnel. It is critical that live and blank ammunition never be stored or issued together. Failure to abide by this rule can result in death or injury. In this case shown, live machine gun ammo was introduced into a non-live fire event, resulting in injured Marines and degraded combat effectiveness for the unit. When the ammo arrives on a range, there will be a joint inventory of that ammunition between the OIC and the ammo tech, utilizing Form DD 1348 TAC 1A, the official supply document from ASP, and the NAVMAC 11381. Ammunition must only be delivered to appropriate ranges and training areas, never to cantonment areas. Drivers must have completed the explosive driver's course. Ammunition guards must be armed, and ammunition must be delivered to the OIC. ammunition shall not be issued until the OIC is present. Security Risk Code Category 1 requires an E6 or above in order to draw it from the ASP. Escort the munitions to the appropriate range, and maintain custody of that ammunition on the range. The NAVMAC 11381 is the Ammunition Expenditure Report for accountability. The range OIC is the individual who signs for the ammunition and fills out and signs the NAVMAC 11381. Information recorded includes nomenclature and lot number, and the quantity requested, received, expended, and turned in. Note that the 11381 must be filled out on the range by the OIC prior to going hot. In order to establish a field ASP, you must submit a request to the Range Control Officer no less than 7 days prior to the event. The field ASP OIC shall ensure that all ammunition is properly segregated and that appropriate firefighting equipment is present. The guard force shall consist of the following: a staff NCO, a corpsman, and an appropriate number of armed watchstanders. All ammunition will be issued to appropriate OICs on appropriate ranges. NAVMAC 11381s will be maintained by each OIC of each range. As stated earlier, all ammunition must be properly segregated. In the example shown here, you can see the improper storage and a lack of segregation of ammunition. It is critical that not only the OIC of any field ASP is established, but each range OIC maintain positive control of all of their ammunition at all times. When filling out the NAVMAC 11381, you will find a majority of information required on Form 13481A, on ammunition cases, and on projectiles. This information includes the DOTIC, the lot number, the quantity, and in some cases, the serial numbers. In our example of a NAVMAC 11381 shown here, the unit requested 96 rounds of Bravo 576 training practice. The ASP, in order to meet the quantity required by the unit, attempted to fill the order with what was believed to be a like item, namely Bravo 584 target practice. As you can see in our example, Bravo 576 was the type of munition requested. It is a non-dud producing round, which is allowed on all maneuver ranges, and does not require EOD clearance after use. For our example, the unit also received Bravo 584. You will note that in contrast, it is dud producing, not allowed on all maneuver ranges, and requires EOD clearance. Back to our NAVMAC 11381 example, the OIC determined that the replacement item, Bravo 584, was not appropriate for use on this particular range, and it was returned to the ASP without being fired. Prior to departing a range or going cold for the day, the OIC will report to Long Rifle all munitions that have been expended. This report by radio will include the DOTIC, the nomenclature, and the quantity expended. The OIC will utilize the NAVMAC 11381 to make this report. Our next section will cover the proper procedures for occupying and using various types of ranges and facilities aboard Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton, as well as some specific live fire requirements. Units requesting to utilize ranges to conduct live fire maneuver must submit a concept of ops and scheme of maneuver to the Range Control Officer. For ranges without dedicated impact areas, the deadline is 60 days prior to the event. For ranges with dedicated impact areas or mortar firing areas, the submission deadline is 14 days prior to the event. Additionally, any applicable waivers must be submitted no later than 30 days prior to the event. For Tactical Air Control Party events, the FAC or JTAC must submit a SIMCAS overlay, if conducting SIMCAS, no later than 14 days prior to the event. The brief sheet and overlay will be submitted to the range scheduling at the shown email address. When conducting standard UAV training, the event should be scheduled in RIFMAS at least 7 days prior, and for non-standard UAV training, 14 days prior. In both cases, a UAS brief sheet and overlay shall be submitted to the Range Control Officer prior to the event. Note that non-standard UAV training can only be executed when the air station is closed. In order to conduct hazardous activities at Camp Pendleton, we utilize a special use airspace that prevents interference from civilian aircraft. The first layer of special use airspace is 2503 Alpha and 2503 Bravo. It is scheduled for use with the FAA from 0600 to 2359 daily. In order to allow extended use of that airspace from 2400 to 06, units must submit a request via email to range scheduling at least 5 working days prior to the event. The next layer of special use airspace is 2503 Charlie, which is utilized for high-angle artillery firing. It must be requested at a minimum of 20 working days prior to the event. The final layer of special use airspace is 2503 Delta. It is utilized to conduct live fire artillery for coastal AFAs, and it must be requested at a minimum of 35 working days prior to the event. All live fire aviation activity must be scheduled during air priority days or times in the Zulu and Whiskey impact areas. For Zulu, these are the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Wednesday and Thursday of each month. For Whiskey, these are 1400 to 1700 and 20 to 2300, only during weekdays. Also, please note that all non-supporting ground ranges will be required to check fire during these events.